My ex-fiancé cheated on me, so I married his best friend.
The Uno reverse card.
I met my ex-fiancé when I was 19 years old, female. We met on a website meant for musicians to form bands together. I met my ex, 18 male at the time, let's call him Shane, a couple of days after he reached out to me if I would join his band. This is kind of like a indie comedy plot.
Yeah, from band joining to home wrecking.
Ooh. We had a jam session together, and I guess I was smitten from then. By the way, this comes from Remarkable Ostrich on the r/OKstorytime subreddit. If you want to submit your own story, go submit it there. So he was very charming and charismatic. And even though we didn't start our relationship with the intention of dating solely for music, we ended up forming a romantic relationship. He is from a very wealthy family, like stupid rich, is from the LA relationship, super tall and fun guy. He's very interested in how music can be made with machines with the rise of AI. I graduated a year before while he graduated high school a couple months after we met. Both of us wanted our independence from living with our parents and decided to move out together since financially it would be easier to afford an apartment where we live with two people contributing. Our intentions were to continue dating while we lived together and made it clear that if anything happened to our relationship, we would be civil and help each other with the apartment until we could fully separate things, the usual spiel. I feel like they're moving in together too quickly.
I mean, it's hard to, it's always relative. Like no two situations are exactly the same, but it is kind of a good rule of thumb.
Dude,
to like not move in too fast.
Yeah, I mean, like after like maybe a couple of years, a year is pretty quick.
It does change everything.
Yeah. We would be civil and help each other with the apartment until we could fully separate things, the usual spiel. We had only been together a couple of months at this point. We told my parents that we planned to move out together, but that it wasn't anything too serious. Well, make a long story a bit shorter, my parents talked us into getting married.
Oh, no.
My parents are very religious and basically said you might as well get engaged if you're going to be living together. So yeah, we got engaged after only knowing each other for barely 4 months. Bad idea.
I've heard stories where this works really well. I actually heard a story of someone who's been together, they've been together for like 40 plus years and they married with not even a week of knowing each other. But that's a different
crazy.
Time, different people,
the
different
amount
culture.
of times that has failed is way more than the amount of times that has succeeded. I guarantee you 90% of 1 week knowing marriages fail.
I would probably even say higher than that. Probably even more.
Oh my God.
98.
Why would you do that? Barely 4 months they've been together. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Not to mention we were literal teenagers. I guess at the time I didn't think much of it. He was nice and we had a lot of interests in common, though there had been a couple of red flags. I swept them under the rug because I had been in a lot worse relationships, don't ask, but we got engaged, things were good, and I was excited. For some context, it's very common to get married at a very young age where I'm from, so it really wasn't all that weird. Are you from Provo, Utah? Because maybe that's might be. They get married young over there. They get married after 4 months in like Provo, for sure. Yeah. I mean, if you're in college, if you're going to BYU, I did a series with Mormons where I threw a party for 100 Mormons.
I did. I watched that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. I remember. I mean, I knew about that. I didn't realize that they were 100 Mormons.
Yeah, it was 100
That's
Mormons.
Crazy.
And dude, like the fastest people would get married would be like 2 months. And it was normal to have like 9 months to like a year married.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's very common to get married at a very young age where I'm from, so it really wasn't all that weird. But overall, I was excited. I will come back to the red flags in a bit. Well, we moved in together, and before I knew it, things started to turn sideways. We began fighting. He started ignoring me. He seemed to turn into a completely different person. Looking back now, it feels like he dated me to be able to move out of his mom's house because as soon as we moved in together, he dropped the charm. He became distant and cold and stopped caring for me no matter how much effort I put in.
He replaced his mom with you.
Ugh.
Yep, your dynamic completely changed.
That sucks.
He's got the new
Which
new
is
mom.
why you wait for longer than 4 months, because I don't think you can really tell who someone is in 4 months.
Also,
you haven't seen them in enough context.
Don't let anyone else talk you into getting engaged.
Yeah, exactly. That should be a completely you thing.
But it sounds like they come from a cultural area where it's like the parents really do have a lot of authority over what's going on.
So where does the best friend come into all of this, you might be asking? Well, the best friend, we'll call him Connor, at the time 19 male. Connor and Shane had been good friends since they were kids. I would hear about Connor from my ex all the time, though I'd never met him myself. What's strange to think about now is that my ex would always badmouth Connor, and I remember taking the friend's side. He used to make fun of him for not dating and saying that he needed to date a bunch of girls to get the hang of it. And I remember being super uncomfortable with it. He would also make fun of how he spent his money because Connor would keep his money in savings rather than blowing it on stupid, frivolous things. It sounds like Connor's awesome.
What a teenage thing to make fun of
Yeah,
someone
dude.
for.
You're not buying Jordans and you're putting it into stocks? Ugh.
Check out this financially responsible loser, dude.
Ugh. I remember telling Shane that his friend sounded mature and responsible, and he would shrug it off.
He'd be like, what are you, a dork too?
Yeah.
What are you? Why don't you go put some money in your saving account, nerd?
There was one night where we were playing online games, the three of us. And I remember my ex continuing to make fun of / ruin the things I was working on.
Minecraft right there.
Knew it.
He's like, you call this a house? He just explodes it.
Connor later told me that he had felt bad and gone in and fixed what Shane had ruined. Connor literally had built you up while Shane is tearing you down.
Yeah, Connor's building you a home.
Yeah.
Shane's blowing it up.
Maybe you should move in with Connor, both
yeah.
in Minecraft and in real life.
I think out of the two, I'm on Team Connor, right?
I didn't know this until later. I remembered my conversation with Connor being quite pleasant as well. But anyways, things with Shane just went downhill real fast. He became a completely different person, and suddenly the red flags stuck out to me, and I felt stupid for dismissing them. He used to make fun of a lot of things about me, but at the time I thought it was like a type of flirting because he never sounded that serious. And I guess I was used to being made fun of for my style, so I took it. Aw.
Year-old flirting.
Yeah. Grow up.
You're gross.
Like me. You want a kiss on the slide? I guess I was used to being made fun of for my style, so I took it. He also made me throw a bunch of my valuables away before we moved in together, telling me I needed to grow up / move on. I threw away journals, onesie PJs that my mom had bought me that were super comfortable, and dried flowers I had keepsaked. He used to make fun of my orientation as well. I am bi, telling me he didn't mind loving men, but you can't like both. This didn't come out until after we moved in together and became a big point of contention for us since I'd been with a woman before.
I guess he was just like, look, I'm fine competing with half the population.
but not
everybody, you got to pick a side.
And after we moved in together, the taunting and teasing only got worse. He would go hours, sometimes days without speaking a word to me. He would refuse to cuddle with me or want to be near me. I found myself being very lonely for a long time. I was visiting my parents more than normal and spent the night with him a couple of times. Things were just not working. But in case you forgot, we were engaged. And the engagement.
It's been 4 months, dude. You can end it.
This
not that big of a deal.
End it.
But I think it's hard. They've got to be in a huge echo chamber, a little micro bubble.
Yeah. And
they do
they're
not
living
have
together.
The perspective.
They're living together.
They don't know what normal like relationship paths and boundaries, I guess, are. They got talked into an engagement from their parents, which is like that's
I think
already
you got to break up
weird.
And you got to put some boundaries. Maybe start dating someone else.
Oh yeah.
So you won't get back together.
I wouldn't get married for at least another 5 years.
Yeah. And wait 5 years of knowing that person.
At least 5 years.
Oh, man. Because we had gotten engaged, I felt a lot of pressure to stick things out. No!
No!
A whole part of an engagement is like to suss out whether it's going to work almost,
it's
know?
sort of like it's the prequel.
It's a marriage lights.
It's the prologue. Or
It's the trial.
Yes.
We had booked a venue and bought a dress. My parents were very anxious to get us officially married. Luckily, the date for our wedding had been set for 9 months after we moved in together, giving me time to eventually leave. Good.
Crazy that the timeline is twice as long as you've been together before the marriage happens.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Fast forward and things were over between us. There was no reason for us to stay together. We were miserable. At least I was. He seemed content to do whatever he pleased, lived on his own, have a food pantry, etc. And I decided things were over. Our lease wasn't even 6 months in, so we ended up living together after the breakup. Oh man, I see where this is going.
Oh yeah?
I see you. She's going to be clapping cheeks with his friend while they're still living together. That's what I see.
Wow.
That's fine. I like that. Do it again.
Oh, mama. What's that? Do I hear a round of applause? No, it's just OP and the best friend.
That's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. The last week of us living together, okay, we fast forward another 6 months. I had decided to finally do something for myself. John, we're going to get back to the story, but you're old.
You're as old as me now, pal.
I might be as old as you, but I feel like you have oodles more wisdom.
I've got some wisdom in this old noggin.
You got a piece of wisdom for me right now?
Always respect your elders.
And I think the other piece of wisdom that I've learned from John is join OK OK Storytime memberships.
Yeah, that's freaking right. We have 60 plus hours of exclusive live streams on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
It's only $5 a month, so go to the link in our description, youtube.com/OKOP show/join.
Get it now while I'm still alive.
And now back to the story. Since the last couple of months, I've been trying to do everything to cater to Shane's needs and try and squeeze any amount of love out of him since I was sick of waiting. I had booked my schedule out to pursue my passions. I even booked a tattoo appointment. I was feeling good about myself for the first time in a while, and Shane decided that on the day of my tattoo appointment, he was going to hang out with his friend Connor. I encouraged him and told him to have fun. My tattoo appointment was in the morning, and I was going back later in the afternoon since it was a 4-hour appointment. Lucky for me, you're going to continue to hear that word pop up. I ended up getting back right before my ex and his friend were about to leave. Shane was going to be taking Connor to my grandparents' house without me. We've been working on a camping trailer together, and he was going to show him the progress, but since I was only a couple minutes away, I thought I might as well come since they were going to my grandparents' house. So I got in the car with them, and we went over to the grandparents. Shane was quiet and didn't interact with my family, not out of shyness or discomfort, but more out of cockiness and disinterest. Connor, on the other hand, was being super nice and friendly with my family, and I remember thinking, dang, that's how I want my future husband to treat my family. The only thing my ex did was flash my tattoo to my grandparents after I'd specifically asked him not to say anything since it was a fairly big tattoo in a more private area, and the tattoo itself was an NSFW design.
What?
I wonder
Why
what
are you going like,
And why are you
you're
flashing that
skipping a
area
lot
to
of
your
steps
grandparents?
before you got to that tattoo, right? Maybe they already have more. I assume not, though, because it seems like they come from a pretty traditional background.
Yeah. I was embarrassed to say the least. The rest of the time spent with the two of them was Shane poking fun at me and Connor for random things, and we had a second of alone with Connor since my ex had to step away for a second. I said, wow, it's kind of rude to both of us, isn't he? We had a bit of a light bulb moment. I sat with those
Spray
feelings for a
bottle.
while after Connor left and I was alone with Shane. The next night, my ex left me alone at the apartment. He decided to stay at his mom's house and left with my thoughts. I decided to reach out to Connor since he would know Shane better than most, being his friend. I DM'd him on Instagram and I asked if I could talk to him. We ended up having a really long couple-hour phone call late into the night where Connor basically told me that my ex had always been that way. Rude, dismissive, cold, always starting arguments with people. This was the night me and Connor realized that he had been treating both of us terribly. Connor, for many years, even before I got in the picture, we both realized we needed to get out. I ended up calling my mom the next morning and my family came and helped me move out of the shared apartment that same day. And even though me and Shane had agreed to be civil in the beginning and help each other out if we ever broke up, Shane refused to help me cover rent and find new people to take over the lease. I ended up having to drain my savings account to cover our last month's rent, but lucky for me, I was able to find a nice couple to take over the lease. That's nice. I apologize that the story is so long. You really do need all the context. Well, according to Connor, my ex had told him everything that had been going on with Shane and I's relationship before they hung out. He had told Connor that I was a B and that I was crazy. Isn't that always the case? This week that I'd gone out to do things for myself, find myself again, he told Connor that I had lost my mind and was going insane.
That's the typical response when it's like,
Oh,
oh,
wow.
she's not doing exactly what I want her to anymore. She must have lost her
He
mind.
told me that I wasn't home most nights. I was out interviewing for my dream job, and he had decided to get a tattoo out of nowhere. I'd planned it for 2 weeks, but I guess that is a spur of the moment kind of thing. All I can say is, lucky for me, Connor decided to hear me out before just fully trusting Shane. Even though Shane and I had broken up, me and Connor decided to keep in touch and help each other through the breakups we both had with Shane, because I guess Connor had broken up with Shane because he was a bad friend.
Yeah.
Mine being romantic and Connor's being the end of a friendship. Connor was super sweet and we would text throughout the day. I'd always thought fondly of him with everything Shane had told me about him, and he came off very genuine and caring, and you can't have enough people like that in your life.
That's right. I mean, hey, if you had to be with this absolute stinker of a guy,
Scumbag.
Shane, to end up with Connor,
Stinker, I like that.
you know, it's kind of like The Alchemist. Although
Everything
I
is
think-
like The Alchemist.
I think maybe like the timeline could have been a little
Expedited.
Like when
to be fair, the
trust your gut,
timeline
people.
was expedited.
Trust your gut, though. It's like I feel like your gut might have told you sooner that things were wrong.
Yeah.
Trust your gut, people. Your
Yeah.
gut is almost never wrong.
Well, I feel like Opie's gut, like she registered that things were wrong, but was just,
Once her and Connor
told-
started talking, it
yeah.
was like, oh, it's very clear now.
Yeah.
This is messed up.
I was having a rough time with the breakup, mostly the frustration of living with my parents again and being out of routine. So Connor offered to get me out of the house as a means to try and help make me feel better. He offered to take me to a little science museum, cute, which I thought was sweet because most people I would talk to would just want to hang out, and I appreciated the effort. Long story short.
Long story short, take your dates to the Science Museum.
Dude, the Science Center, great date spot.
I would agree.
Long story short, our Science Museum hangout ended up turning into a date. And just a couple of days later, we had our first kiss.
No way. And then a week after that, we got engaged. No, I mean, no,
Dude,
just kidding. We learned that lesson already.
I felt really safe with him, and he was allowing me to be myself. I could be goofy and silly, and he would smile rather than give me a dirty look. I was finally feeling like myself again. Before you judge me too harshly, remember the title of this post, Married and Happily.
Yes.
Well, like I said in the title, our unintentionally petty love story, we're going to get into.
So now we're just now getting into it. I want to
been
let you know
30 minutes.
we've been into it, and it's a good story. We love it.
We love it. Well, like I said in our title, our unintentionally petty love story. So let's get into it. When I was dating Shane for music reasons, he had introduced me to a song he wrote called Moab, meaning mother of all bombs, but I took it as, oh, isn't there a place called Moab?
There is a place called Moab.
I ended up looking up this place and found that there were incredible national parks there and became obsessed with the Delicate Arch. When me and Shane were together, I begged and pleaded with him to go on a trip with me to Moab, but every time I brought it up, there was an excuse. So when we broke up, I decided to book a trip myself. I planned to go alone, but at this point, me and Connor had become a lot closer, and he offered to go with me since he felt it would be probably safer to not go by myself. So we ended up staying the week in Moab together. Unintentionally petty, number one, this trip was over Shane's birthday.
Uh-oh.
I didn't plan for that, and originally I thought I was going to go by myself, but me and Connor ended up going together to the place that I asked Shane to take me so many times.
Also, Shane doesn't have any right to be upset about anything because he was blowing up your Minecraft house. And who is the
Shane
man rebuilding
is
it?
A piece of poop.
Connor.
I had only planned on going down for that day, but luckily I didn't because there was so much to see and I wouldn't have been able to do it all if I only was there a day. Connor booked the hotel and everything because he knew how important it was for me. Connor is the best.
Connor is good.
And when I saw the Delicate Arch for the first time, I cried because it had really become an important part of me, as I had painted it many times and even had it painted on my guitar. Seeing it for the first time was so special to me, and having Connor by my side, knowing he put in all this effort to help me accomplish my goal, was so meaningful. That's awesome. Unintentional petty number two. Me and Connor decided to get an apartment together. And can you guess what our move-in date was? Well, we moved in the day me and Shane were supposed to have gotten married. You can't make this stuff up. That was the only day the apartment complex had available in the time frame we were looking for. We sat in our balcony in our new apartment and ate pizza together over a wedding that luckily never happened.
I feel like that's a good omen.
Yeah, going back to our favorite book, The Alchemist, this is an omen.
It's all about the omens.
Pay attention. It's all about the omens.
All about the omens.
Luckily, never happened. Also forgot to mention that Shane had wanted Connor to be his best man, officiate our wedding. And unintentional petty number three, Shane introduced me to some new music while we were together. One band in particular struck with me. I ended up introducing Connor to my music, and funny enough, he ended up clinging to the band Shane showed me. The song Shane and I, were supposed to dance to for our first dance was by this band. Connor didn't know this, and a few months after we moved in together, we were at that band's concert with the VIP tickets. It is now Connor's favorite band. Say what you will about Shane, but he had some good music taste.
Apparently,
by the way,
Connor approves.
Yeah. And by the way, if you want to have good tastes in podcasts, you should listen to our podcast where we release every day, multiple times a day on the OKstorytime podcast.
That's right.
So,
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get podcasts, just search us.
Search us.
Storytime. And then you can treat your ears to a nice, tasty little delight.
Unintentional petty number four. Remember how I told you that Shane had written a song called Moab? Well, I also write music, and since my and Connor's first road trip had been to Moab, I decided to write a song of my own called Moab.
Oh.
I am also a songwriter. And guess what? Me and my friends recorded it, and Moab was the song me and Connor danced to at our wedding a year later.
Oh, good omen.
Moab became such a special place to us that our wedding cake topper was the Delicate Arch. We even got engaged at the Delicate Arch. They got engaged at the Delicate Arch.
Delicate
oh my God.
Arch is like
all because of my ex.
Carrying this relationship.
All of this to say I'm the happiest I've ever been, and now I am with the sweetest, most caring man I've ever known. We've been together for almost 3 years now, been married almost 2 years, and bought our first house 2 years ago. We're now expecting our first baby and couldn't be happier.
The first of many, I'm sure.
That is so freaking cute. OP, you deserve it after that absolute cluster of terribleness that was your last relationship.
It takes rain and sunshine to make a rainbow. I think the moral is that when you feel red flags popping up, right, it's best to really pay attention.
Indeed.
Regardless of how long you've been with somebody. Life is about constantly like assessing what's going on around you, right? If you like turn off the eyeballs and you just like are floating around, life starts happening to you instead of the other way around.
Yeah.
Like you don't want life to be just something that's happening.
And life will give you signs of where to go.
That's all about the omens.
It's all about the omens.
You can just read the omens.
There are omens everywhere.
Yes.
And you have to open your eyes to them. Open your field of vision. Don't have blinders on. Just then you'll see, oh, wow.
Indeed.